Gather round the fire, friends. I have a true bone-chilling tale for you from the border town of Juárez, Mexico. A place where hundreds of young women have mysteriously vanished, later to be found brutally murdered in the desert sands. This story begins in 1993 with the death of a young woman named Alma. Alma was found beaten, violated, and strangled. The first in a string of horrific killings that would earn the unknown killer the name the Juárez Ripper. Now, Juárez already had a reputation as the murder capital of the world. So at first, Alma's brutal murder didn't raise too many alarm bells with the police, but the bloodshed was only just beginning. Over the next year, more and more young women disappeared without a trace from their homes, their jobs, even public buses. The victims were slender with dark skin and hair, mostly teens and women in their early 20s. These vanished women had families desperately searching for them, but the police blamed the victims, branding them loose women and assuming they had simply run off. The murder count climbed higher and higher, with bodies continually discarded in the desert sands. By 1995, over 40 women were confirmed dead at the Ripper's hands. Yet the police insisted it was simply usual gang violence and ignored pleas from the victims' families to investigate. But there was one man paying attention, a forensic investigator named Oscar. After reviewing the mounting piles of cases, Oscar detected connections between the murders the cops were ignoring. And he became convinced a serial killer was prowling the streets of Juárez. Oscar took his findings to the police to demand they investigate a serial killer. But the cops, they brushed Oscar off, shelving his reports about a potential Juárez Ripper. Oscar eventually quit his job in sheer frustration. Yet, the savage slayings only grew more frequent and more brutal. Now, things take a truly bizarre turn. In October 1995 came a breakthrough. A young woman escapes an attacker holding her captive and reports the crime. She leads officers to the home of an Egyptian immigrant named Abdul, claiming he kidnapped, violated, and threatened to kill her. Police race to arrest Abdul as the prime suspect. The public and police proclaim Abdul the Juárez Ripper, despite no evidence linking him to earlier crimes. Only the fact that the killings temporarily stop after Abdul's capture seems to confirm his guilt. But the real killer returns by spring, dumping more mangled female bodies in the desert. Still, the stubborn police use questionable tactics to pin additional murders to Abdul and various gang members. They torture confessions out of vulnerable people close to the cases. Yet the savage slayings continue unchecked. By 1999, over 200 women are dead, with no real investigation happening. The police try pinning the blame on various bus drivers or locals with no real connection to the case. The tide started turning in 2001 when Mexico elected a new president who took the murders seriously. A federal investigation found the local police guilty of torture, abuse of power, and gross negligence in chasing the Ripper. Over 100 officers lost their jobs as a result. Further inquiries revealed the strong likelihood that powerful drug cartels and gangs were involved in some slayings. Informants claimed certain gangs used the violation and mutilation of young women to celebrate successful drug shipments into the U.S. Yet the federal police had their own questionable theories too. New FBI agents arrived on the scene, discounting a serial killer angle altogether, despite the clearly patterned nature of many killings. Instead, they called the hundreds of deaths single homicides with no connections. This stance ignores key evidence noted by profiling legend Robert Ressler, among other experts. Ressler stated at least 76 victims followed the exact same patterns of violation, body mutilation, torture, and disposal in the desert. Oscar the investigator always believed the Ripper was a local Mexican citizen, familiar with Juarez and the surrounding dumping grounds. But Ressler felt an American killer was crossing the border to access easy victims. Others suggest both scenarios may be true. One monster spawned another who reveled in the utter lack of competent police work. And the theories keep piling up, even today. Josh Randolph, an FBI agent working just across the border, stated, "This would be an ideal killing field for a serial murderer given the nature of the law enforcement response to these murders on the Mexican side." While most victims tragically remain nameless in this case, a brave few families continue fighting to keep their lost girls more than just faceless victims. Maria Sagrario Gonzalez Flores was just 16 when she vanished working in a factory. Maria's mother, Maricela, walked 3,000 miles to Mexico City, pleading for justice. Family members carry banners with Maria's smiling face during protests. Lilia Alejandra Garcia is another young woman memorialized by her family after being found violated, beaten, and strangled in 2001. Lilia's sister worked tirelessly, investigating the murder and pressuring police. She became a voice not just seeking answers for her sister, but for all the dead women of Juarez. Tragically, she was assassinated just days before testifying about Lilia's case. The daughters, sisters, and mothers killed have left behind loved ones who at least want the dignity of a real investigation and condemnation of such brutality. They keep fighting so more women aren't just discarded like garbage in the desert. These families endure so much pain, but show unbelievable strength keeping their girls' memories alive. Over 20 years later, more than 800 grieving families in Juarez still don't have answers. Their cruel deaths remain collateral damage of the corruption and violence festering in Mexico's border towns. Until the police get their act together, the Ripper's bloody legacy may keep growing for years to come.